Welcome to Cafe Snacks, the most wanted questions of current happenings for UPSC, SSC, and other state administrative examinations. It is OnLearn, and this is Shyam here. Let us move on to the first discussion. From today onwards, there will be only discussions, and questions will be done in a round in weekly basis. Now, let us look into the first article. The first article speaks about mixed messaging. And mixed messaging is something that refers to the GVC plan of India. What is GVC? It is Global Value Supply Chain. It is a part of syllabus in GS Paper 3 Indian Economy. And why this is in news? Because Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. He spoke about the need of Indian economy being getting integrated in the global supply chains. Now you need to understand what is global supply chain and why India is pushing for global supply chain. Now, we all know that India is a developing economy and it has a vision of $5 trillion economy. And in order to make that happen, India need to focus on Indian manufacturing. That is, Make in India is such an initiative that focus on manufacturing India. And in this line, Assembly in India is also projected by the government. Now, GVC has a potential to bring the structural shift in our economy from agriculture to manufacturing and also from low-end manufacturing to high-end manufacturing. This will lead to skilled labor forces and also higher productivity. And this can in turn lead to a $5 trillion economy. And that is the reason why India is pushing and looking forward to become a part of GVC, Global Value Supply Chain. First and foremost, you need to understand what is GVC. What is GVC? GVC refer to international production sharing, a phenomenon where production is broken into activities and tasks carried out in different countries. That means a particular nation will be doing research and development, another nation will be doing the design, the production, etc. Such is the case. That means in different geographic spaces, different activities are carried out, and potentially that will culminate into making of a singular product or service. That is global value chain. That is the full range of activities that are divided among multiple firms and workers across geographic spaces to bring a product from its conception to its end use and beyond. That is GVC. And why India should focus on GVC? Before that, let me make it clear why India need to focus on GVC. India need to focus on GVC because India, as Bangladesh has done, need to ensure that there is proper economic growth and development, there is increased job creation and labor welfare, and also there is transformation in our society such that our farmers will be having a better income, our economy will be a resilient economy, and also it all ensures that India is a competitive market for other nations to enter. These should be done in a comparative way, in a properly thoughtful method. And that is the reason why India should join GVC. The latest World Development Report of the World Bank. So the World Development Report is published by World Bank and it focuses on global value chain. It has a lot to speak about global value chain. Let us see what it is being emphasized. Which have become, that is, the GVC has become a vital for production and trade. Items once designed, manufactured and sold within one country are now designed, manufactured and marketed in several nations. Now, the why is the main aspect of Indian negotiation for 7 years into RCEP. That is because, as I said earlier, RCEP is a route through which India can ensure that it is a part of GVC. RCEP nations, or these Asian nations like Bangladesh and Vietnam, has spearheaded economic growth through GVC. They are part of GVC. And India has backed out of GVC. Why India has backed out of GVC? Because there is a speculation that once India ensures or once it opens its market to China or other Asian nations, Indian market will be flooded with such cheap exports and that will structurally destroy our non-competent domestic base. But the right policy was to join RCEP and lead RCEP by giving a tough bargaining on entry conditions. That was what India should have done. Now GVC will locate in countries with the logistics and procedures that ensure fast turnaround of goods and services. That means only a nation which is willing to provide better logistics and better tax rate cuts can afford GVC. Now, India must reform its import and export procedure, including GST. Only then it can ensure that other nations will participate or make it a part of GVC network. Now, India's ratio of trade in goods and services to GDP peaked to 56% in 2011, but it fell to 43% in 2017. That is the reason why India need to focus on the GVC chain. Now, WDR, that is the World Development Report, says the share of GVC in world trade rose rapidly in 1990s and 2000s to 52% by 2018. The reason was because of the declining air and sea freight costs, the growth in ICT technologies, and also because of the emergence of WTO, the trade became more efficient. Then there was free flow of foreign investment, etc. That is the reason why it was much better. And the situation in India is much better after 1990s so that it can welcome GVC participation in a structured manner. The greatest leaps in productivity, says WDR, takes place when poor countries shift from agriculture to simple manufactures that can be exported en masse. That means India, when it shifts its economic structure into a manufacturing structure, there will be enormous growth in India's GDP. And that is the reason why India should join GVC. Now, in this base, India has done much better. It has shifted to certain sophisticated areas of manufacturing like computer software, pharmaceuticals, and autos. Now, countries have competed to slash tax rates and offer subsidies to attract global firms. So, other nations are doing tax cut rates, they are also offering subsidies, and India should move in this direction. The WDR says that to take GVCs further, international cooperation is needed to create common standards that lower non-tariff barriers and to coordinate tax rates, infrastructure, and regulations. A critical area is the taxation of companies with massive sales but very low tax payments in many countries. So, OECD says that there need to be a proper negotiation with respect to tax rates. Only then GVC can become part of any nation. So, that's it. Let us move on to the next topic. So this topic is a part of Polity and Governance in GS Paper 2. And the topic is regarding Chief Justice of India's Master of Roster system. So let us discuss. The Supreme Court is required to act as a guarantor of fundamental rights. But now it has turned its activity and become an executive court. Now what is an executive court? An executive court is a court that fails to keep a check on the executive powers of the government. It means that a court, instead of being impartial, it delivers judgments in favor of a government. Now let us discuss about the Master of Roster. Now what is roster? Roster is defined as a system to allocate different tasks to all the members in order to achieve higher efficiency. Master of Roster refers to the privilege of the Chief Justice to constitute benches to hear cases. And also, whether it is Chief Justice of India or Chief Justice of any High Court, it is his or her administrative side authority. And also, this includes allocation of matters before a judge as well. You need to remember that. It is not just regarding the Chief Justice of India or Chief Justice of High Court. So, no judge can take up the matter on his own unless the allocated by Chief Justice of India in the Supreme Court or Chief Justice of the High Court in a particular High Court. Now, where is this particular rules mentioned? Or who is the person who makes the roster? According to Supreme Court Rules 2017, that is, according to Rule 29, expressly states that the registrar shall prepare roster under the directions of Chief Justice of India, and all such powers and duties and functions of the registrar are subjected to any further special or general orders by the Chief Justice of India. And also, in State of Rajasthan versus Prakash Chand case, the particular case defined clearly that regarding the matters of the High Court, the Chief Justice is the Master of Roster. And in between 2017 to 2018, it has been emphasized 3 times who is the Master of the Roster. And in all three judgments, it says that Chief Justice is the master of the roster and he alone has the prerogative to constitute the benches of the court and allocate cases to the benches so constituted. Now, what is the procedure? There is no written procedure. That is to be remembered. When a case is filed, its details and subject matter are scrutinized by the SC registry. Now, the cases are then categorized based on the subject matter, and there are about 47 broad categories. Now, the registry notifies the roster for the benches, which is done on the basis of the subjects. So, usually it is done on the basis of subjects, and the CJI approves it. More than one bench is allocated the same subject matter. Now, what does the CJI has to do with this? The CJI can issue a specific instruction to list a case before a particular bench. Now, the CJI, as the master of roster, has a right to mark sensitive cases to specific benches. Now, this is the problem that has arisen recently. That means, if the CJI is handling politically sensitive cases to specific benches in order to obtain judgments in favor of the government, it is against the ethics of judiciary, and that is the reason why master of roster has popped up in news. As the institution's head, the CJI also has the discretion to set up larger benches. Now, the CJI is informed by registry officials that a case is sensitive. Now, if a case is sensitive, then it is left to CJI to decide if he wants to mark it as per the roster, retain it with himself, or let another bench hear it. And as per the convention, the CJI, on being informed in advance, either hears the matter or he refers it to top 4 judges in seniority after him. So that's all. Let us move on to the next news article. Now, what is the news? It is about a research paper that speaks about the ideas needed to change India's forest policy. Now, as part of the syllabus, it is in GS paper 3, Environment and Ecology. Now, the backdrop of the issue is that domestic timber production has decreased and imports soared because of the decades of policy which were focused on conservation instead of production. Now, let us look into the history of forest policies in British India and later after post-independence. Now, the first conservator of forest was appointed in the year 1850 by the British in Mumbai, present Mumbai, that is Bombay, and the first forest department was set up in the year 1864, that is to be remembered. In order to generate income, the Forest Act of 1865 was brought out, and which classified the forest into reserved forest and unclassified forest. Now later, in 1865 Forest Act, it also envisaged to keep the local people away, and that is the reason why the British government constituted most of the forest acts and policies. By the Forest Act of 1878, the provisions that the villagers should not enter into the forest were made much stricter. And the next Forest Act was enacted in 1927, and it further curtailed the freedom of the people. Now, what happened post-independence? After independence, the area of forestry was given importance, but only after the priority areas of agriculture and industry. Now, conservation began. The Central Forestry Board was set up in the year 1950, and it was followed by National Policy on Forests in the year 1952. And you need to remember that it is the 1952 National Forest Policy that the target of 33% of the total land to be covered by forest was established. Now it is still followed. The 1952 National Forest Policy was again replaced by National Forest Policy of 1988, and here too the emphasis was on conservation of existing forests through reforestation and soil conservation. Now, aims of the forest policy is already discussed, that is conservation. You need to just read through that. But there were 3 areas which they focused, that are protecting the forest from illicit felling, encroachment, forest fires, grazing, etc. And also reducing the damage to forests from insects, fungus, diseases, etc. This also includes reforesting areas that may need trees for the ecological balance of the region. This is already discussed. Now, organization of the forest sector in India. There are 2-3 points to be remembered. That is, the forests in India are almost owned by government, and any afflictions to the forest must be reported to the forest departments, which are agencies of the government of India. Now, the forestry sector is headed by a principal chief conservator of forest, and the Ministry of Environment and Forests is a key administrative agency for planning and the coordination of all environmental programs. Now, what are their duties? The duty is to do research, conserve, consult if any activities are necessary, and educate the public, and direct involvement in the reforestation process. The 1952 forest policy was a failure. Why? Because it was inadequate to reduce forest depletion. The forest being a state subject, there was no serious effort made for the preservation and conservation of the forest. And that is the reason why it has now become a concurrent subject. The forest policy of 1988, it has something to do with timber. There are 3 provisions which I have highlighted here which deals with timber. That means meeting the requirement of fuel wood, fodder, minor forest produce, and small timber of the rural and tribal population. It speaks about collecting forest wood for fuel, and also increasing the productivity of forests to meet essential national needs, encouraging efficient utilization of forest produce, and maximizing substitution of wood. So all these speaks about conservation and avoiding unnecessary wood collection from the forest. So that is why forest policy of 1988 focused much more on conservation. Now what is the result? Until 20th century, forests across the globe were specifically managed for timber production to meet industrial demand, and there was increasing pressure to divert forest land for agriculture use and also to meet the demand of the population. Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization estimated that there is a annual loss of about 16 million hectares of forest between 1990 and 2000. Now, however, with an increasing emphasis on biodiversity conservation, the principle of managing forests shifted to their sustainable use rather than exclusively managing them for timber production. As a result, existing forest policies, laws, national forest programs, etc., in various countries across the globe were revised in order to promote sustainable forest management. And this has led to a gap in timber management and production. The result is that here is a huge gap in timber supply and demand, and there is a shortage of production from domestic sources. Now, the solution is to make a proper conservation policy that must focus on maintaining ecological balance and improving biodiversity through protected area management. Now, the restoration policy must target reclamation, rehabilitation, and regeneration of degraded landscapes and wastelands. There need to be recorded forest area production. That means sustainable increase in the forest productivity in such areas will boost the production. That is what the research paper, which is a part of news article, discuss. And the states must devise working plans and demarcate 10% of the forest for plantation. In RFA, 10% need to be meant for or need to be demarcated for plantations. So that's all about this particular news article. This news article is titled Close All Power Plants, and it has appeared in Hindu. The syllabus concerned for prelims and mains is both environment and ecology, and the theme is India's energy sector. Now let us discuss the issue, the backdrop. According to recent analysis carried out by Climate Research Horizon, shutting down thermal power plants which are more than 20 years old can lead to financial savings of around 53,000 crores. Now, you need to remember that whenever such news regarding energy sector arises, you need to be very well versed in renewable energy capacity of our nation, what we have achieved and what we are intending to achieve. Because UPSC is very much focused in this particular topic of renewable energy capacity. Now, the target of the government is about 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2022, which includes 100 gigawatt of solar, 60 gigawatt of wind, 10 gigawatt from biomass, and 5 gigawatt from small hydropower projects. What are small hydropower projects? they have an installed capacity of less than 25 megawatt, and such projects are small hydropower projects. Now, look into the share of different sources in installed capacity. The renewable energy constitutes about 24% of installed energy capacity of our nation. Nuclear constitutes about 2. Thermal is the highest, it is about 62%. And large hydropower, that is having an installed capacity above 25 megawatt, such hydropowers constitute about 12%. Now, as per the renewable energy capacity, we need to remember that it is as part of the Paris Agreement commitments that the government of India has set such an ambitious target of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity by 2022, and it has achieved about 87 gigawatt installed capacity by 2019. And in gigawatt, this particular 87 gigawatt is constituted by wind power at 37.67 gigawatt, and solar at nearly 34 gigawatt, and biopower 10 gigawatt, and small hydro at 4.68 gigawatt. That's all for today. The discussion is completed.